Hey there, welcome to episode 2 of Niver Niver Land. Today with me, Jason DeRusha, WCCO morning anchor. I've known this guy for some time. First met him back in the Town Talk Diner days when I was handing him boozy milkshakes across the bar. And now he's helping us with our daily news every morning, the middleman, taking care of presenting us with what I believe the truth is. I can trust this guy, Jason. You don't have to, but I do. Anyway, welcome Jason DeRusha to Niver Niver Land, episode 2. Well, hey there. Welcome to episode 2 of Niver Niver Land. Another beautiful day here in St. Paul. And with me, a friend, Jason DeRusha, today coming to me after his early morning anchor stint, as he's been doing this how many years now? It's not really a stint, is it, Jason? Welcome to Niver Niver Land.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. 8 years of morning, 18 years at CCO.
It's a long freaking time, man.
Yeah, that's...
How you feeling? Feeling good? You got a lot more left?
I think so. I don't know. You definitely, like, the longer you do something, the more you think, is this what I'm going to do forever? Like, it's nice to run that kind of analysis through a position of enjoying what you do now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I mean, if I thought I could only be a restaurateur, I think I would be really sad about that. Yeah. I think that if I wanted to do something else, I could just put my mind to it and do it. Obviously, Jason, you have all of these skills, and certainly, you know, looking outside your business is kind of fun. It could be almost even like, what is out there, a fantasy? Like, what can I do next?
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it's fun to think about that. And I don't know if my bosses like me thinking about that, but, you know, I definitely will say I don't picture myself waking up at 2:30 in the morning when I'm, 60 years old. And I certainly hope I'll be doing something else. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure it'll happen. I'm sure you'll make it happen. We're here today, Jason, because of Niver Niver Land. Isn't it strange also that I can now get to interview you? We talked about it a minute in the green room when I brought you a little hand plate with cheese.
Very nice, so luxurious.
Very luxurious. And just, it's nice to be able to sit with you and me interviewing the media. But you're a friend more than the media. But when I started this podcast, I was kind of like, hey, I'm going to do it a Tim Niver thing. It's going to be a restaurant show. And then as I thought about it a little further, it's like, oh shit, what am I actually going to talk about? And there's just so many things out there that I was, big picture things that I was thinking. And one of them is that you doing what you do, being the newsman that you are. Is it okay that I call you a newsman?
I think so. Yeah, it's good.
I mean, here we go. You're kind of, you've been under attack. and I laugh at that, but it's been hard, right? This fake news stuff is like totally crazy. But like, I see you as this middleman, and you're kind of sifting through things, and I'm, waiting for you to tell me kind of what's going on, and I have to trust you, and thank God I know you. I think it makes it so much easier to trust, but wow, a lot of, distrust out there right now with news and all of that. It's pretty heavy, right?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, after, 4 years of having a president, look, presidents always hate media coverage. Barack Obama didn't like the media coverage of him. But to have a president kind of, on the one hand, court the media attention, but then on the other hand, tell America how we're like the enemy. That is, that combined with, I think, people's kind of general sense of angst during COVID, just like people are coming at you left and right. It's okay. Like, I feel like I'm pretty good at handling it.
Yeah.
But, and it's also sort of like when people complain about Congress, but then they send their congressperson back, and you're like, like, how much do you hate politicians if you keep electing your politician? And I think in local news, sometimes we're in that position where people hate the media. Oh, but Frank and Amelia are fine. Like, we like Frank and Amelia, or we like Jason.
You end up knowing them a little bit more. Yeah. I was just saying, you end up having the people that you watch, and my mom and dad watch different shows than I do when it comes to news, and people are taking in news in very different ways now, and
which is great. Like, I mean, the more sources you have out there, I think the better. I am a little concerned that the incentives in the marketplace are there to come at stories from a viewpoint and sort of serve up whatever your audience wants, which is funny to hear like a TV news person making that criticism, because we've always tried to figure out what kind of information do our viewers care about, and then we serve that up. But this is different, where people are serving up like from what angle you want. So like if you're a MSNBC, well, now CNN too, right? Like CNN used to be right down the middle. And I mean, I watch now and you're like, this is unrecognizable.
Yeah.
You really have like anchors kind of ranting and all of this stuff. Yeah, I just don't know, maybe people want that. And there's a long history of kind of media and journalism coming at things from a perspective, and it's not inherently wrong. But I guess maybe old-fashioned of me, but I do think there's still value in having someone that you trust to sort of be down the middle and evaluate things as they come in.
Yeah, just like the plain facts about things.
Yeah, not that, every story doesn't have two sides. Sometimes there just are facts, right? But don't you want the arbiter of that, or at least the investigator of that? Like ultimately, I would like the viewer to decide, but I would like to be able to present the information, at least in a fair way. This idea of balance, I think, has largely been dispelled in a good way, where we don't have to like, well, this side says racism is bad, but on the other hand, there's this guy who says racism isn't so bad. Like, we don't do that anymore. At one point, there was more of that, I think. Like, this side says this, that side says that. You don't really see that with climate change. I mean, science has decided pretty clearly that humans are causing warming of our planet. It's
pretty
not that
clear.
It's pretty clear. Now, science always has some
Most of us
reinvestigation
believe
and
this.
debate. Almost everyone believes this, right? And certainly almost every scientist believes it. And so as a member of the media, like, I don't have to, every time I do a climate change story, go be like, well, this guy says maybe it's not happening. Like, no, we don't do that, which is good. But
so consider your source. How do you do that? I'm not sure. It takes investigating on what you read. You really have to kind of, like you say, maybe look at a couple of different media outlets and pick the one or the mix of things that work for you, but then there's still some interpretation in there.
Yeah. People bring, I worry, as someone who does this for a living, if there's enough of an audience of people who are genuinely curious, or if people just want to hear their own beliefs parroted back at them. I don't know. I think when it comes to local information, people still largely want kind of unbiased news.
Yeah.
But we'll see, like, do people want, our elections have become much more national, right? Like, are you on Team Trump or not is a pretty important position to be analyzed, it seems, for a lot of voters. I don't know, is that good to be running everything from a national perspective, or should we care more about our communities? I don't know. We'll see with the younger generation as they get a lot of news using apps on their phone. Well, it's easy to get news. You can talk with your friends who live all over the country about national issues, but what about your local school board? What are the
Absolutely.
issues playing out in local communities? They're all national issues, and you think like, well, that's concerning to me.
Well, and they're big moral issues we're confronted with too. Like, nothing's not heavy right now.
It's pretty heavy. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, the moral issues are kind of, they divide, they put that, kind of stake right in the middle, they draw a line in the sand, and, you stand on one side or the other. I think finding this middle, you seem to, like, when trolls come at you, you seem, willing to engage, and you also seem, you have the ability to politely either placate or even put them in their place with some sort of finesse. That's a real skill. I don't know how we take that and apply it to like a bigger picture, but in a way, I think we really need to figure out how to, put some things down and meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Real quick question though. Where is your voice in all of this? How do you, something's scripted for you and you're just like the guy talking, right?
Right.
No.
Right.
Yes?
Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no, right?
right.
So the morning news, which is pretty straight, like, here's the news. People work overnight at CCO. We have producers who work overnight, write the news. I read it before I say it. I know what's going on. And I'll question things if I think like, I'm not sure, is this right or is this fair? Or I don't know if we know this. How do we know this? It's challenging first thing in the morning because you can't call anyone to ask.
So you generally agree with what's written for you.
So you have to, right, you sort of have to trust your team. And we talk about things afterwards, or there are certain types of stories that we'll talk about the night before where we're like, let's make sure we're talking about this in this way, or this is sort of the language. And people know like certain phrases that I don't like. And sometimes they put them in there just to drive me nuts. Like, it's all people. So
they
like,
should mess with you, though.
I mean,
That's all right. I get
mess
it.
with me.
Make sure he's looking.
But like, that's the thing, right? Like, the media, people have this idea that the media is this monolith. Like, you're just, the corporate overlords.
Sure.
Like, no, corporate people don't care what we're doing as long as we're getting audience. Like, that's what they care about.
People watching.
Are people watching? Yes? Okay. Like, no corporate person has ever said, like, oh, well, this is how we want to cover Donald Trump. Like, no. We have, like, that's it. Like, they don't tell us. We do what we think is best for the community and for the truth. Like, we do our best. But it's people. It's just people. And that's why I engage with the trolls. Because, first of all, sometimes the trolls are right. Yeah. And so I think it would.
It's true, though.
Sometimes they're right.
Yeah.
It would go a long way as a society if we would open our minds to the fact that the people we disagree with sometimes are right. Sometimes they're right, and sometimes I'm wrong.
That perspective of being open enough to do that is, I think, exactly kind of the point right now. Like, we really need to be able to have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that
not
movement.
To me, it's not that hard, but I've always lived in that space where I find it pleasing if the viewers who are unpaid reach out to me and point out something that could make my story better. You're like, that's pretty great, right? Like, they're not getting paid. It's not the public editor who works for the TV station. It's just regular people who want the news to be fair. And as long as people are still fighting for that, I think, like, we're still in the game, right? They care enough to tell you, like, hey, I think you screwed this up, or why did you quote this person without disclosing they are, have XYZ conflict of interest? And you're like, oh, I didn't know
Try
that.
writing a headline these days at all.
The headline police are out, man. And the Twitter police, like, this is what I will say.
It's really hard. It's
like,
really hard, right?
As someone who spends most of my day focused on our product that's on the air, it is tiring to have people come at you for, like, one word that might have been omitted from your tweet. And you're like, really? Is this what we're doing? But the people who come at you on this stuff don't watch the news. They don't. And so that's challenging. Like, how much of my energy am I supposed to spend, trying to defend ourselves to people who are literally not watching anything that we do?
I'll mute somebody if they correct my grammar. I cannot deal with it. I can't deal with it. Like, it doesn't. Yeah. I don't need a teacher right now. Like, this is fucking Twitter. I'm gonna say some dumbass shit.
Yeah,
it's potentially, like, a little racy or whatever, but that's me. Like, that's me.
Would you worry about that for you as a business?
Absolutely. Oh my God.
Because you're a business owner.
Yeah. Well,
and you're out there a little more, I think, than many.
Well, that's funny because I really don't think that I don't feel like I am. Like, I have a personality that's out there, but I'm like pretty careful.
I think you tread very carefully.
And I don't want to say anything to offend anybody. I don't necessarily like the fact that as a restaurateur, I too have to find this neutrality. I talk about it a lot, actually, especially lately. Like, I don't necessarily want that neutrality. I want to be able to have an opinion that I can put out there that maybe doesn't affect my business, right? But obviously I do have to watch what I say. And then I also want to make sure that there's an inviting moment in the middle at the table for anybody who has, any opinion about anything. Because you can drop all that shit when you come to my place and sit down and eat, and I'm going to look you in the eye and tell you the special and, like, try to make you happy in the moment. It doesn't really matter, like, necessarily your entire belief structure. I just want to fucking feed you and provide you an experience, and also bring you to a table where that doesn't matter. Absolutely.
What's funny is that statement that you made, I think 10 years ago, would be a widely accepted viewpoint, that we should be able to sit down with people we disagree with, break bread. Today, I think you find a little bit of moral superiority when you act like, no, I will not have any discussion with anyone who believes what
X
or
or
who
Y.
voted
Yeah.
for Y.
Yeah. Oh, it just makes the divide, wider.
It's simple. It's simple because you create this absolutism and then you don't have to examine anything. You surround yourself with people you agree with, and this is where we are as a country. The city is full of largely like-minded people. And so you can't say everyone agrees on everything. You look at Minneapolis and it's a question, everyone's a Democrat, right? But it's all like where are you on the continuum? And so you still can have dispute within the party, right? But, and then you go to greater Minnesota and you don't know anyone who has, some of the views that might be considered more to the left. And so I don't know, is that just where we're going to be as a society? Maybe the urban core is going to be this type of thought. But it's human nature to always disagree with people. So that in that, even though you're all of the same kind of big picture, you're the same party or belief system, within it, you're like, oh, what's going to happen if you're forced into dispute with that? You're like, what? It's just interesting to see.
I know. And I feel about
it makes people more extreme, I think.
It does. The fringes are way more visible. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But even with my own folks, in the entirety of my life, I wrote them a little note before the election last year, and I told them their preferences, and I told them why, and I asked them to consider my position for my family, because they're kind of set up. They're set up. They don't really need much more. But me, I'm 32 years younger than they are, and my kids are this much younger than they are, and I need them to vote for my children.
Think about the future. Yeah.
Yes.
Were they receptive?
I think Gen X has largely been useless in forming a real narrative. We might be most effective as the boomers go away, being that first older generation. We still have time, y'all, to be that first older generation, right? That's actually open enough and liberal enough to see, what the masses need versus what's kind of here at the top. I'm not busting boomers' balls. This is what happens. This is how it worked out for them. This was kind of the way things went.
Yeah, you kind of age into and income into a certain worldview, and you're protecting yourself.
Yeah, did your parents understand you when you were a teenager?
No.
No, absolutely not. So now, you're asking those same people to understand teenagers again. It's not possible.
Right. And the world has changed. It's scary to people.
Changed.
It's scary when it upends your...
And there's such desensitization, in the youth, like they're desensitized.
Yeah.
They have just images. It's really tough to stop, but we still have a chance as Gen Xers, I think, to make a difference when we arrive to the point where we're the ones kind of that older generation voting down towards, the benefit of more. I think that will.
Well, a lot of this change happens outside of elections, right? So you look at the workplace, for example. Most of us spend most of our waking hours at work, right? And so we're already seeing kind of the Gen Zers taking strong positions as to how workplaces should act.
Yeah.
And you see people who may be offered a job that might be great for them, but you look at how the company is treating other people and you think I'm not sure I want to work at a place like that. That's pretty interesting. So I think some of it's going to come from workplaces and from private, maybe more change than you see from the government, right? And from elections.
Well, I think we're making the decisions, to be quite honest. We can't even raise a minimum wage that's grossly low on a federal basis, and it's all right. I think, we need to talk about minimum wage. We're already above it. We're so far above it.
Isn't that interesting?
Changes are made, because of the market as well. And, you don't want them to go below a certain level, but the market's already demanded some things. I really don't want to, lose sight of the fact that, trust is really hard, but we have to try to regain it in a way. We have to, there's work finding that middle ground so that we can actually get some shit done.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're just kind of spinning on tires and you hear from one side and then the other and nothing happens. And government, other than the fact that the government saved my ass, it's really actually the first time I feel during the pandemic with the PPP and such.
Right.
It's really one of the first times I've ever felt the government was there for me.
Huh. Interesting.
Saved my ass. It's like literally. And I'm like, okay, that was pretty effective, I think. And a lot of people, there's a lot of controversy around who got the money and why and all that
You can
stuff.
question, but it's been the most effective and quick way of getting money directly to people than I think you could have imagined.
Yeah.
Right? It was a little messy, but like, how else do you get money to people fast?
Yeah. And
it kept people working. Didn't you think that maybe 40% of restaurants would have gone under?
I thought a lot more would go under.
And how many went under? It's about the same as a normal year. No real change as far as I could tell.
Well,
we'll see, but like,
and there's still fallout from this. Like you say, it's not over. I just, don't want. I think then that's it. Maybe that, you do a one-time payoff and the industry might be okay. We've been doing this for the farming community. We've done this for the airline community.
Sure.
We've done this for the auto industry.
Right. Nobody questioned those payoffs.
And it's funny too, because we have insurance. We're all like so happy about having insurance. Like it protects us. And it's like also like a really like a major amount of money that we're piling into insurance where, say like in healthcare's case, like this, you could really help so many people immediately with something like this,
It's sort of the grossness of like, and I tread lightly because we have a giant health insurance company here in the Twin Cities. Many of your customers or my viewers work for that health insurance company. But when you have record profits in the middle of a global pandemic, it's sort of gross.
Yeah, and it's just
weird. A little gross, right?
Well, you don't want it to end up that way, and the trillionaires are on the way.
The rich people are doing pretty good.
And
pandemic
I don't
wasn't
hate
bad.
on them for that. I don't hate
not
on
their
anyone.
fault.
No, but there's there's also some more for more. I think is perhaps
that's interesting.
The way I'm headed.
But to your discussion topic of being in the middle, now I think there is a significant portion of people that would like not want, if you were offered the chance to like sit down and have dinner with like the CEO of 3M or United Healthcare or Best Buy, people are like, screw them, millionaires don't want, and you're like, why are we there? Why is that where we are as a society? Like, and we saw this with President Trump, people who just wouldn't go to the White House or sports teams, or people who were like, oh, I wouldn't, and I get it. Like, I'm not saying you're supposed to like, I don't know. Maybe I don't get it. You don't have to agree with the person to sit down and have a meal,
Totally get it.
But if your picture's taken with someone like that, then all of a sudden you're like, look at this person.
You have ties.
Is that?
I see those everyone is welcome here signs, and I'm like, that is sweet. But there are people that will see an everyone is welcome here sign, which is meant to be welcome, and be like, oh, no. I'm not going to go in there. Everybody's welcome. No freaking way. I know what that means. Yeah. I'm not going in there. And the political part of my business is not something that my business doesn't actually have a political stance on anything.
Right.
I operate it and I do it with love and care behind it, and that's really my motive.
That's your ethos. It's the
love and
care.
That's the motive. Yeah, it really, really is. So, and I think even restaurants being in the middle, I think restaurants have been in the middle of this for a long freaking time. A weary traveler rolls in and you welcome them. You don't necessarily know where they come from, where they've been. It doesn't really freaking matter to you.
Right.
They're there in support of you, and basically I'm there in support of them. And so there's this, I hope restaurants can be the middle. I hope people, can go back. People are having a hard time coming downtown because it's perceived dangerous. Well, sure, these are different times, but it's always been a city, and you can't just like not go there because in the moment it doesn't feel uncomfortable. That's actually when you need to go and like look at something and take a bigger, deeper look into it. And, the middle is very interesting, being in the middle of Lower Town. When it's, pretty cold out this winter, we'll see what's still happening.
Right.
There's still like a lot of things that we haven't landed. So it'll be really interesting where and when people start to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I think you have to, and this goes to your question as to like, how am I open to people who, perhaps my personal opinion might disagree with them. But it's this idea that you have a shared humanity and that people deserve to be listened to. And I think it makes your own arguments a little stronger if you are willing to go ahead and put it up against somebody else's.
Yeah.
And then think about it, genuinely think about it. Now, some people are just full of crap, right? They just are. And a lot of what happens online is it's not a genuine argument. This is where I get burned. When somebody asks a question and I respond, and they're not really asking a question. They're just trying to be like, got the news guy. Like that happens a lot. I'm a little more savvy about that now, but many times that's happened.
I think I just lost my whole setup. You're going to be finding through me here. I'm trying to get you to say something so wrong.
Right.
So, how do we prioritize progression towards, the middle with folks, like you can, mollify a situation online with a troll, and that's a skill. How do we do it, in a larger sense and bring people back to the table a little bit? I'm not sure you can answer that question, but I wonder what it is. Can we just find a couple of priorities and, let's work on this because we mostly agree, and then the stuff on the fringes, the hardest things, the really, really deep moral stuff. Maybe I don't want to say don't go after that because I think that's where the biggest struggles are. But we do have to find a middle. We have the time to think about all these things that we say and put out these opinions. We have that time. It's kind of a privilege, We could be just trying to sustain, feeding ourselves,
Right.
So privileged to be able to have these opinions put forth, but we still do need to find a middle. And I'm not preaching about it because I don't know how to get there, and I get my hair raised up, but there's got to be a place where we can center in and zone on something so that we can get something done. Don't you think? I mean,
I wonder if the term thinking about the middle is problematic because it makes people think we have to go from the position over here and the position over there and end up equidistant in the middle. And the truth is, I think of this more as a range, right? So it's possible that one side is very, very wrong and another side is, at least when you think about the moral decision or the cost-benefit analysis or whatever. Like this, we've always done this as a society, right? But the truth is, the correct answer isn't always right in the middle. But we used to think by meeting in the middle, then you could take another whack at it and then meet in that middle and then take another whack at it and meet in the middle. And then you end up maybe in the right spot, right? Little incremental progress. And I think today there's just less interest in incremental progress. And some of what
incremental progress is maybe not fast enough.
It's not fast enough. It's not fast enough.
There's a couple things.
When you look
some people say, "Hey, my issue needs to be fixed right."
There are certain things that are urgent, right? For sure. And there is no middle for that. You just got to do it. But I do think this idea. I guess I wish we could get rid of this idea that if you're spending time with someone with political views different from whatever your group has decided is the correct view, that you're a bad person. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's easier to throw a person away, kind of.
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to deal with this argument anymore.
Maybe
it'll get better when we get past, I guess I will say I foolishly thought, once there's a COVID vaccine, then
people
start going back to work and they'll stop being so mad because they were at home in the basement and not going to work to blow off steam by complaining about their boss to their coworker.
It certainly accentuated the problem, right?
I think so. I will say there are some interactions. I think social scientists are going to have an amazing time looking into this stuff.
No doubt.
Because there are interactions that we have in daily life that we think are unimportant. But sometimes standing in a line with other people at a coffee shop is perhaps a useful experience. Perhaps there's more to saying hello to someone at a counter than we realize.
Do you think people are in a Starbucks or whatever? I don't know where you get your coffee. I know that you are a coffee guy, but wherever you get your coffee, you're in a coffee shop. Do people do they see you walk in or do they hear you walk in when you're talking to whoever you're with? Do you think that people hear your voice?
Usually the voice is the giveaway. People always say, they're like, it's your voice gave it away. For sure, the voice.
And when did you did you always, I mean, you were an actor and a singer in high school and stuff like this, right?
True.
So you kind of always had a voice of sorts, like that you were,
Oh yeah,
it was louder than a lot of other people's maybe.
Well, for sure, yes, very loud indeed. My wife is always like, "Shh, you're so loud." I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not. I am not loud. I just want everyone to hear everything I'm saying. It's all very good stuff.
You have a great voice.
So when I was in high school, I had a theater teacher who was also our high school radio station sponsor. And at some point, like, people always are waiting to hear like my real voice. They think the broadcast voice is fake. Like, this is it. Like, but what happened, I think when I was younger, there was a real voice, like a real teenage boy, man, whatever, man boy, 14-year-old voice. And through working on theater and broadcast, it sort of came together. Like, in my mind, I remember being in the play Our Town, and Kurt Steinhauser, the director of the play, was on my case about sounding like I was. He's like, stop sounding like whatever you think a news anchor should sound like, and tried to get me to like find my real voice. And I think what you see a lot of people, especially on the news or on the radio, doing is their impression of what a news person should sound like. So I sort of kind of just, maybe I met in the middle with my voice, with the fake voice and my real voice, and now this is it. This is what we got.
It's a really sexy
It's a little
voice.
show. Thank you. I get that a lot.
I've actually prepared an impression of you. The first time I was asked to do an impression. I wouldn't have thought of this, I don't think. But we were at the Charlie Awards, and I was nominated for Best Restaurateur, which I did not win. The winner was in Aspen skiing. It sounds like a great
successful
opportunity.
Successful restaurateur.
You can
clearly.
grab the award after the show when you get back from Aspen or whatever.
I think
just
that person
joking.
actually was stuck on a plane delay. The private jet
Love you, Luke. You're
wasn't
good.
fueled
You're
up.
good. But I was asking about your voice and how we find our voice, and I think I'm still finding mine. I think this podcast is a process for me to actually find my voice. It doesn't matter when you find it, or maybe you don't want to find it, but I'm still finding my voice, and I think this is kind of funny. So anyway, we were at the Charlie Awards, and it was part of you being introduced as the MC, I guess.
I think so, yeah.
And I had to say a Jason DeRusha line of something about pancakes. You mind if I give it a shot?
No, please. I'm very, very excited to hear this.
Good morning. I'm Jason DeRusha. I like puppies, pancakes, and Pinot Noir.
It's very good. Very very
there,
close.
Like, I'm Jason DeRusha. I like puppies, pancakes, and Pinot Noir. It's a
little better, a little more in. It's hard. You have a very distinctive voice as well.
Do you think you can do it? You think you can do an impression of me? Or?
I mean, can I
a little
do
work.
an impression of you? Or chef? Hello, chef. Good to see you, chef.
All the time.
I'm not going, you want a dessert for your birthday? I'm not giving you I can't really do it. Like, there's this sort of East Coast kind of...
You're not from the East Coast.
Not
it would
for
be
me,
very,
for you.
It's very
for
hard.
you.
It's unimitable.
Your voice is a tricky one. But if I studied it long enough, I think I could do it.
I thought you were going to say
it's
something
very
like, dude. Well, thanks for letting
Your
me...
voice is one you hear from a mile away, though, right?
Yeah.
It's very distinct.
My kids, like, this year we just started, they just, like, after all these years, and we were at the dinner table, and that's when we tend to get in an argument as a family. I have no idea why. Probably because it's when we have time together.
Right.
And then, then invariably I'll say something, and then I'll be like, oh, no, and everybody, like, sits back, and then I'm like, I have been loud forever. Like, somehow... They're just able now to tell me how loud I am. And it's like, Dad, like, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm from the East Coast, big deal. But also my family's, they're kind of like, go do everything. They made me do everything in school. Yeah. I actually, in a way have been in the middle, tried to be in the middle a lot. My dad was the superintendent of the school I went to. And, who am I going to be a dick to? You
Correct.
know, and I think that's hard for a teenager. I think you want to be a dick to someone.
For sure, yeah.
It's
one of the hardest things about my chosen profession. Like, I can't. Only when I go out of town.
Yeah, but that's
I can't even
be
do it
so
there. Too many Minnesotans wherever you go.
Well, I've enjoyed sitting down with you at a table or two, and it's nice to like talk to you about like what we're eating or whatever, and the discussions we have, and then and maybe you've been on with dinner with you or something you were going to write about or whatever. But, to see what you write and thinking, oh, yeah, I know like a couple of little ditties that weren't like put into that. And those are the things I want to fucking hear. But Stephanie March and I were able to do episode 1 together, and she's amazing. We talked about feedback a little bit or a lot actually. And I'm not sure we arrived at anything there. It's like good to get feedback. I want stars. I want ratings. I want to know where I stand. A lot of people feel a little weird about that. But, I also want to hear from
I love stars. I love ratings.
Too. I want to hear from voices I trust when I get them, too.
Yeah.
So interesting, kind of as things rolled out a little bit after the first episode. I started looking into, I brought up the Eater 38, and it's a valuable resource. And I saw that Eater Twin Cities had somebody writing for it. And so I looked at the name, and then, of course, I did some investigative reporting, Jason, and I found that this person's based in DC writing about, Thanksgiving stuff in Minneapolis. And I just said, hey, are you coming out, or are you mostly in DC? And I have not heard back. But when I was in there doing my investigative reporting, of course, other things pop up. Like there was a person named John Chang who wrote a couple Eater articles about the Twin Cities as well.
Right.
And then you posted this article, a tweet it was, but it was with the cardamom review of 2 stars. And you said something that was very interesting to me. You said that 2 stars means really good or real good. I don't
Get
know,
used to it, meaning that it's good.
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
And so there's this immediate recalibration, the way Rick considered things, the way John Chang considers things. I thought the article was really well written.
Agreed. I agree with his assessment. I'm sure if you're the chef getting the new reviewer's first review of 2 out of 4 stars doesn't make you thrilled. But 2 out of 4 isn't, to me, it's not how we should be looking at reviews. It's not 2 out of 4. It's you earned 2, right? So the starting point for any restaurant, what I love about what he's doing, and then I'll say like why I don't give stars, even though I wish I could. But a 1 star should mean it was worth writing about this place. It may suit your needs. I will say one of the biggest things I struggle with is that a lot of restaurants in the Twin Cities that people love are 1-star restaurants. Nothing wrong with them. They're good. If you live in that neighborhood, you probably love it.
Yes.
But I live in Maple Grove. Should I drive to your favorite neighborhood restaurant? Probably not. 1 star.
Well, I mean, it fits.
Right?
It fits like a style too, like a very casual.
Nothing
service.
against it.
No,
You're like wonderful.
and
Like good for you, really.
We've eaten at 1-star restaurants that sometimes feel better and taste better than 3 stars.
More fun, better food for sure.
And I think at a 1-star level, there's a lot of people producing a lot of the stuff that we would expect, but it's also really delicious. But 2 stars,
I agree. But in a 0-star you're just not even worth writing about. Like, so we're just not writing about you. That's
1
fine.
star is something.
Like, you're doing fine. To me, 1 star should be meaningful. 2 stars, cardamom, which I enjoyed cardamom. I've been there 3 times. I enjoyed cardamom. His main critique is there's a sameness to the food at cardamom once you've eaten through the menu. Now, to a regular person, is that a negative? I don't think so. Most people aren't going that often, right? So
it's a critique,
but
maybe
it's a good
range,
critique.
Yeah, it's a range of flavor that
you're like, hey, this is
Adam freaked out this week. I'm like, dude, like consider the flavor wheel here, and he's like, looked at me like, what do you mean I'm not considering the flavor wheel? I'm like, well, you want something that's dynamic and over here, and this can be like this. It's just an opinion. Like, I wasn't trying to like freak him out, but
right,
like
you think about those things.
I have to.
Right.
I've already given myself what I think John Chang is going to give me when he comes to my restaurants.
Yeah.
I already know know what I think.
know that.
I already have an idea what he's going to say about my places.
And you may be fine with that. Because we're not all trying to be a 4-star operation.
No, absolutely not.
Right?
That's not it.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
So like if you're Cardamom and you get 2, I would say, now I might quibble a bit and say it might be a 2.5 for me. And that extra 0.5 is mostly because it's one of the coolest locations in the Twin Cities.
Sure, it matters.
If you're going to bring an out-of-towner and say, where are you going to go out to eat? Boy, sitting at Cardamom, looking out on the sculpture garden and the Walker, to me, like, that's maybe worth an extra half a point.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know the
Because
chef, but
and the food's really good.
So, yeah.
But 2.5 is fair, I think.
And we're also like, you're coming off of like Rick's, words there. You're kind of, in his rating and his star system. And, we're just having to do this calibration thing. It
got kind of
Pete
hard,
Wells is,
right?
like reviewing and writing about a lot of things and the range, And he got after Fieri back in the day, and I was like, but I loved reading it, you know what?
Yep.
And if people aren't pissed off about it, maybe if there's not a little controversy, maybe it's not as fun. Maybe, there's got to be something to work on too,
I think that's right.
JD tweeted to JD Hovland read Dara's article about a review of Muriel and said, hey, this is great. And since I've read you, I understand why I don't want there to be stars in a rating system. And she, obviously Dara appreciated that. And I added on, that I don't need stars from her because her stories are so good. It's not like necessarily what I want Dara to be Dara and tell us that, and
no one can tell
different types of
no one can
things.
tell a story like her. But I will also say, like, her review of Muriel doesn't necessarily help me figure out what to order when I go there.
Sure.
Right? It's a wonderful story where you're like, this is amazing. Like, hearing this story makes me love Muriel.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
But it serves a different function, which I think is great.
And I love it.
But I do like laying it on the line and saying, you know what? 2.
Yeah.
Cool. Defend it. It's defended. You're like, all right. Like, I can't wait to see what else he writes.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting, and
And we'll see what his taste is, and does it line up with yours. I mean, that's sort of what you do.
Like, he posted John Cheng posted on his Instagram story, his first a picture of the review in the paper, and he's proud of it, and I really like that. I'm like, cheers and best of luck. I'm out here. It's really cool. It's really cool, and I'll miss Rick.
Yes.
But I I don't know that he would want to be my friend, but I would be Rick's friend because what a nice dude, that guy is
so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have loved reading him, but it's always good to bring in a new voice and a new perspective.
Yep.
And we're in a time.
And a city perspective. He's from a different city.
Yeah.
It looks like been in New York.
I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's just he's eaten, so he has a good food catalog. So that's the hardest thing, I think, when you start writing. When you haven't eaten, like if you're just a regular reporter and now you become a food critic, which works. I mean, that was Dara, right? Like, she wasn't a food person. She was a regular City Pages reporter and ended up doing this. But like, no one can write like her. It's amazing. Like, I'm envious of it. Like, she can spin a story. It's amazing.
Yeah. And she puts it all out there too. You know how she feels about things. I'm really respecting that. And, she takes heat and doesn't back down. She's fiery. She's like only diminutive in size, but but her heart and her brain are just huge, and she's got that East Coast scenario too going.
You have to think about, like, the other advantage of, like, recalibrating the stars is that it gives you room to work with, right? And I've struggled with this sometimes, and I think this is going to be a challenge for people going forward. How do you evaluate, food critics typically have evaluated sit-down, fine dining restaurants. What are we going to do when there are, like, 3 of those? And how do you compare, like, how do you write a review of Brasa, for example, or like a counter service,
Was it New York Magazine that had, like, they had white stars and then
Like
black
fill-in
stars.
yeah.
So you're like, you know,
I like that idea.
You know, so it's this level of a place, and at this level of a place, you get this is the best 1-star It gets 4, you know, filled in stars or whatever. But I appreciated that because the cheap eats and the things you don't, you know, that's the fabric of the industry too. You know, it takes all of us kind of to like weave this together. And I you know,
the problem is budget.
But you trust places, right? You go to places that you trust. Like you have to go eat out.
Yes.
But then when you and thank you because you told me even a couple of weeks at Mucci's Italian is our sponsor today here at St. Dinette.
Oh, nice.
But when you were at Mucci's Italian a couple of weeks ago, you said, "Hey, we got to choose where it was like an odd night.
Yeah.
We get to choose, and you came to see me.
Right.
And I really appreciated that. You know, what other spots, you know, do you trust? Because, you know, people want to know. And it's kind of hard to like, you know, put them on one hand, you know,
Right.
places that you really go to, you know, like.
Yeah, it is hard because I feel like I rarely get a chance to go wherever I want. Like mostly the places that I choose to go to are places that I really like the people.
Mm-hmm.
So like I love coming to Mucci's because there's a feeling you get in there. And I was super impressed with the food when I was there too, which was pretty exciting.
When I ask you about that, will you tell me? You'll tell me, right? If you didn't like it, you'd be like, dude, that was too, like,
Yeah.
I've never.
No, I would.
We must be perfect because you've never had to say anything about. And then you can't, right? We're friends, so how could you possibly be objective with?
It's hard to be objective. But when I had to write about which of your restaurants did I write about, I actually reviewed one of your restaurants in Minnesota Monthly. And I disclosed in it, I'm like, Tim's a friend of mine, so I just want to say this.
Must
I
have been
remember
Mucci's?
it could have been Dinette, maybe when it first opened.
Thank you. It's not that I don't remember every word that you said about the place. I just
I think it was Dinette, but I'm not sure. It could have been Mucci's. Yeah, I don't know. That part is a little weird. Like, I don't have a lot of friends who are people who are opening new restaurants. So I have some restaurant people who are friends, which is, I guess, a little ethically messy, I suppose. But people can believe me or not.
Dude. Yeah,
what are you
too
going to do?
bad,
Like,
too
if you don't, if you think I'm like bought by people, well, like I think you should look at like what I wrote at the state fair this year. Like all of my favorite people at the state fair had items that I did not like. And I wrote it. So what are you going to do?
Well, you have to. I think you have to. You're
I work for the
obliged.
people.
Yeah.
You work for the audience, not for the
They wanna
restaurants,
know.
not for the chefs. But anyway.
Well, but if you're glossing over, then how does anybody going to trust you anyway?
Yeah,
You know,
then the
like,
whole thing falls
I
apart,
mean,
right?
obviously you have an opinion.
I like.
And people tell me too, like, you know, I'll ask and I'll be like, sincerely, and I can tell, you know, when somebody's really not gonna tell me, I'm like, all right, it's okay, you know,
Right.
Just let me get you something else, you know, like
Yes.
this happens, and you know, it happens. But
So places
I want them
like.
to trust me, though, you know, man. I really, you know, whoever it is, they say something, I want them to
You
be able
are-
to trust that I'm going to take care of it, one way or the other. If you don't tell me, I'm not even allowed the opportunity to take
Right.
care of it. I'm really glad though that, you know, this industry has voices like yours and Stephanie March, and I do like the idea that there's some alt voices, you know, Heavy Table and The Racket that I've mentioned, and I appreciate that. It's really nice to see the amount of young faces and badass chefs like Carlin and so many others that are just kind of coming up through the ranks, and these I'm competitive with these people I don't know still, you know, the folks that didn't get into the restaurant industry until after the pandemic, and they waited and they were waiting through the pandemic to open, and they didn't spend their money and they didn't like have to like carry the restaurant, but then to see them on the other side with this new energy, and I think, you know, those are the things that push me to be better. I'm going to go to Bar Brava because I'm looking at what they're doing over there, and they've made sense of this wineless thing and this kind of, I can, you know, feel like the New Yorkiness or San Francisco-ness in what they're doing.
That's cool.
And so I'm already kind of getting delivered this essence. Like, I hope that works. You know, I want to go there and be able to meet them and trust them and hopefully, you know, keep creating more community,
Right.
you know, across the table.
They're fun. Like they're a place. So I don't like natural wine. I think I've been pretty outspoken about my views on natural wine. I don't care for it. And so I went to Bar Brava because they were like, when are you going to come here? And I didn't go there, not because I didn't want to, but sometimes in the magazine, they end up writing like a profile of a place. And so then they don't want to review it. So they have profiled Bar Brava. So I wasn't able to review it. So, you got other stuff. I got 2 kids. I got like a regular life I have to lead too. So we went to Bar Brava and I sat down and I was like, just so you know, I don't really like natural wine. Which is an odd thing to say when you sit down at a natural wine focused wine bar.
You went.
But they were like, cool. And everything he brought me was delicious. So it was a very fun and eye-opening experience where you're like, well, it's not about disliking natural wine. Now, given the choice, would I want a high-quality natty wine or would I want a high-quality whatever? I don't know. What are the non-natural wines? Most of the wines that you're drinking are natural, but we sort of get what they're talking about with the natural flavor profile. I'd rather not have the high-quality natural wine. That said, there's some really high-quality natural wines, and it was fun to be introduced to it at Bar Brava by someone who really cares about it.
Yes.
It was really cool
and
experience.
There's delivery there, and that's like, all right,
Food's good too.
like, I have a passion about this. I'm glad that you told them, like, I'm not trying to make this hard on you, but my experience has been that I don't necessarily land on this being something I like. But I am here seated at your table, and I want you to show
Let's
me.
have some fun.
I am open to this.
I'm open to it. Yeah, and it was I would go back. It was a good experience. I really enjoyed it.
Was this a good experience, Jason? Have you had a nice time with me here today?
I did have a nice
It's pretty
day.
cool, right?
It's
I
great.
really appreciate that.
I hope I gave you some insight. Sometimes you feel like, I don't know.
Well, I don't know if there's like full insight on some of the big issues, but I think talking about it, coming to the table and just, inviting people in to hear, that there's people out there that want to hear you, that's good. And
well, I just appreciate that you're open. So this is like the whole focus of my life is being open to the fact that there may be things that I don't know, or that someone is smarter than me about something, or that someone has thought about something in a way that I never would have thought about if they didn't bring it up to me.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what you're doing here. Like you're saying like, all right, I'm open. Let's see what other people have to say.
And I want to be,
cool.
and I want to be ready to like be a good citizen again and, like have this civility discussed and people, hanging out once again,
It's a good day when someone says something where you're like, huh, I never considered that.
Sure is.
Like to me, I love it.
Me too, Jason. Well, I've had a great time.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for your time. I know you're busy, but lovely to share the mic with you.
Yes, thank you.
I'll probably never say that again.
So nice to share the microphone.
Lovely to share the mic with you.
Who talked more, you think, you or me?
Oh, I bet we were a pretty good 70-30 you, yeah.
All right.
No problem. That's why you're here, man. Appreciate you, Jason.
Thanks, Tim.